Well, welcome to Rethinking Freedom. It is Monday, November 11th, 2024, and I am excited to share with you the guests that we have today on this show. You know, Rethinking Freedom is not just a show, it's not just a podcast, it is a movement. Our goal is to get each and every one of us to rethink, to figure out what we really mean by freedom, and more importantly, what we're going to do day to day to bring about that freedom. And today we have three amazing guests. It is Veterans Day, so we want to say thank you for your service to every single person who has served as a veteran officially. I also want to say a shout out to all the people who served to fight for my rights, who may not have fought for the U.S. government or been acknowledged. We know people like Harriet Tubman had to fight to see if she could get her benefits, even though she had served. We know that many of our veterans came back home after wars and were killed. Think about the summer of Red Summer 1919. We know that so many Black and brown veterans did not receive the same benefits that they should have. And then, of course, we have those freedom fighters from way back when. We can go back to Crispus Attucks. We can go back to our brothers and sisters who died during the Middle Passage, during Ma'afa, the transfer from the shores of Africa to the diaspora. And for me, I call all of them veterans. They all fought for our freedom, and I give them all their credit and their honor today. And if you have veterans in your family, today's a great day to call their names. Call their names. Pour out a little bit of water, pour out a little bit of alcohol, call their names. Now, I know there's some of you who just clutched your pearls because you were raised in the church like I was raised, and you said, what? And let me tell you what. I was at a basilica, I won't say where, but it's a huge Catholic church here in the United States of America. And they had so many statues and shrines to the different Mother Mary of this, Mother of this. Listen, and people were lighting candles, people were bringing offerings, people were praying. The incense in that church smelled so good. I wanted to go up and say, where y'all get your stash from? Because I didn't sell it. Listen, don't get it twisted when we talk about honoring our own. All of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, that's against the word of God. No, even in the Bible, there are whole chapters where it's so-and-so begat and begat and begat and begat and begat. They keep their genealogy. Keep yours too. Keep yours too. So, before I get off track here, let me but that's why you come here, because we are rethinking, right? We are not just accepting what has been given to us. We are rethinking about things. So today we have three amazing guests. They're all veterans, and I'm going to quickly introduce them, and that way you can hear from them. Annette from the U.S. Army, a world traveler who has explored, y'all, listen to this, has explored 76 countries. She's an accomplished business owner and the founder of queenswithamillionaire Mindset, LLC. She empowers others to pursue financial independence and wealth building through her experience in cryptocurrency and stock market investments. She's a wife, she's a mother, she's a grandmother. She's also a board member of Intelligent and Talented Girls. We were having a conversation off mic. You don't want to just be talented and not be intelligent, right? And it is an honor to have her join us today. We also have Dr. Lolita, our Gilmore-Randall. She's a highly decorated 21-year Army retired combat veteran with extensive experience in aviation command support and airfield operations. Her military service included 2 combat campaigns in Operation Iraqi Freedom, and I thank God she still got her right mind, showcasing her leadership skills and dedication to service and country. In addition to her military background, she has a diverse academic profile with degrees from Touro International University, Grand Canyon University, Edinburgh University, George Fox University, and Portland Seminary, and Jake's Divinity School. You know why? This is an example of why they say, and the facts bear it out, that Black women are the most educated group of people in the United States of America at this time.
Yes.
Of course, we are also the most disrespected and the most
Yes, ma'am.
unprotected and underpaid, but that's a third show. We don't introduce 2 shows already. That's a third show. Okay. As a licensed clinical social worker with over 15 years of experience, Dr. Gilmore-Randall has a passion for advocating for underserved populations affected by domestic violence, child abuse, sex trafficking, and substance abuse disorders. She specializes in trauma, depression, anxiety, and mentoring individuals impacted by the child welfare system, which unfortunately means she's always going to have a job. Using holistic approach to care and a variety of therapeutic modalities. So we will make sure that we include information. Actually, when I talk with them, that they can tell you how they can be reached, because I'm sure as you hear from each of them, you might decide, I need to reach out to this person. Her dedication to mentoring and supporting others extends beyond her professional roles as she continues to serve the community through her nonprofit organization, Teach Them to Love Outreach. And we could go on, but I want you to hear from them. And our third guest today is Chief Warrant Officer for retired Ron Dexter Jupiter. If you're in my community, you gotta know Jupiter, because when he shows up, power shows up. 28 years active military service, community activist, and that is not an understatement. Some folk like to give themselves titles, but for real, he has earned this one. If there's an issue, and before there's an issue, trying to preempt issues, you will see Mr. Jupiter consistently in the time that I've been in this community, consistently, even when I didn't know his name. President of Bell County Black Democrats, works in the financial services area, has done so for several years. He holds financial certifications in insurance, securities, and investments, Series 6 and 63. I can't tell you what all of those mean. Has a strong passion for teaching financial literacy. We need him, and we need all of you at this time. He's also the host of the Friday morning broadcast on KVBM Money Talk. So welcome to each of you. And I'm just going to call on each of you at one at a time. If there's anything that I left out that you want to share a little bit about, what branch of service you served in, and if you would also share what made you go into service. And if we could just maybe take 2 minutes each on that. What branch of service and what made you go into service? And we'll start with you, Dr. Nunnally.
Hello. I served 20 years in the Army. And what made me go into the service is that my father was a veteran. Originally, I wanted to go to Tennessee State University, but I did not get a full ride scholarship. So I had to have a plan B. And I saw that my father bought our home with the VA loan. He traveled the world and he had some benefits. So I was like, this sounds like a good plan B. So let me follow in the steps of my father. So that's how I ended up serving 20 years in the United States Army.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And how about you, Ron Jupiter?
Oh, man, my story is a little interesting. So I was an immigrant kid from Guyana, South America, living in Brooklyn, New York, doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing. So I got caught up in a situation, and this is real talk. So we were exposing it. And when you're running in New York, we call it passes. We don't call it gangs, because in the Caribbean community, we call it passes. So we had a fight with a different posse. And the next day we went looking for them. And I'm so blessed that we did not find them, because we were strapped and we were looking for them. And it's just what happens in that community, right? If we had found them, my life would have taken a different trajectory. And the next day I had an epiphany. The next day I walked into the recruiter's office and I said, I want to join the Army and leave now. Now, mind you, I graduated high school with a private pilot's certification. You know, I was not a bad kid in school. I was just in a bad environment. And of course, it didn't leave right away. I came in, it took about a month or so for me to get going, which demonstrates some racism in the Army, because I came into the Army with a private pilot certificate, which means I should have gone directly to officer school and pursue that career, right? But what the Army normally does is they put people that look like you and I in our communities. And they only have certain jobs available based on the zip code that you're in. So if you're in the inner city community, the only jobs those people that look like you are going to hire you for are going to be cooks, mechanics, and those things that don't have any type of major statuses to it. So that's where the racism happens. And even the people that is executing it, they don't even know themselves that they're executing it because they're just trying to make mission. They're just trying to get a recruit. So even though I had the ability and the qualification to immediately go to officer school, it took me 14 years to get there. So I did 14 years enlisted and then 14 years as an officer. So that is just my experience.
And you know what? As we have these conversations, because I know there are different people who watch this, it's on podcast, so they can also access it at other times. There's an unspoken, uncalculated cost of racism sometimes. So I know you're doing well. However, what is the difference in earnings from 14 years of being straight into officer school versus starting? What is the difference when we talk about generational wealth, when we talk about, and then what opportunities you're able to provide for the next generation, or even when we see who gets buildings named after them or who gets certain awards or things like that? It's like you set up a system where it's so much harder for certain people to even get into that place. But then because we don't see them, then it's like, oh, they're probably not good enough or whatever. But it's your system that you put in place. But thank you for sharing that. And I'm seeing the connections already. Dr. Nunnally, my daughter, is at TSU. And yes, she went because she did get a full ride scholarship, because this mama with 5 children, we weren't, as they would say, we weren't fitting to pay all them school loans. Okay. And yes, I do have a degree. Calm down. And then, of course, I lived in Brooklyn, Bedford-Stuyvesant to be exact. So, brother, will people who migrated from a different country but served this country, will they be saved from deportation according to the president-elect? I'm just kidding. I just put that question out there. But
that's a different conversation.
Yes, that's the 5th. Yeah, we on the 4th conversation. Yeah. Understand that when we're talking about immigration and how horrible it is, this country would not be what it is without quote unquote immigrants, including our ancestors who were forced to migrate here. But Dr. Gilmore-Randall, please tell us about your service, where you served and why you decided to join.
Oh, wow. This is amazing. Thank you for having me. I served military branch Army. And why did I come into the Army? I would like to say that I came in so I could serve my country. I wanted to do all these great things. No, but I come from a very poor socioeconomic background. And so I wanted to, my desire, I was over there at the University of Alabama. I started there, and then I got accepted to Stanford University. I wanted to pursue law. Could not afford it. And so someone said, well, you go in the military, they'll pay for schooling and this and that and blah, 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 blah. And of course, as you make that leap, you find yourself not going according to the plan that you had initially. And so, and then I get there and I get to the field of aviation. And so, and with that, I'm running airfield operations. Now it's based on trying to get ranked. Now the family stars. Now we begin to move forward. So now your life takes on a different course. And so the initial intent was going so that I could finish school. I did, but now I'm in different areas because I'm being developed more. I'm being exposed to more. I'm looking at the same entities and issues that caused my family to be in that socioeconomic status. This is why I pursue what I do now, the family violence, the child welfare system, the substance abuse, because these were all contributing factors to why we couldn't afford, to go to school or being in a certain situation. So yeah, so that's my story. That's my burden that I have been blessed with to continue to support and move forward. And I will tell you, being in the military, Brother Jupiter said it finest, that you see a lot of our young people come into the military with the same aspiration that I have, but because of the institutional racism, the systemic racism, the issues that you see, many end up leaving the military worse than they started, because they get a lot of them, they have that their discharge is different, dishonorable, because they're trying to get into another aspect of life that they're not really prepared for. And so that's another conversation within itself. And when you think about the Army, it is predominantly, when we look at the statistics, we're looking at people of color that go into that. And it was probably one of the hardest branches to maintain. So, yeah. But I am glad to be here. I'm glad. I don't take anything. I wouldn't change a thing about my journey. I enjoyed it. It is, I have other veterans in my family. My father is a veteran, my uncle out of the Navy. I have cousins. I have one that I would like to just take a minute for a moment of silence for my nephew, who was killed in action in 2007, July 2007. And so on OIF in Baghdad. And so we have had our losses in trying to serve this country, and we've had our gains.
Moment of silence. Ashe for that young man. So you can take any of these three questions. I'm going to put the three out and you put them together, or just choose which whenever works for you. How did your time in the military shape your understanding of freedom? As you've transitioned, or as you evolved in the Army, as you've now transitioned into civilian life, do you have a different understanding of freedom? Were there any aspects of freedom that you found yourself reconsidering after you left service? So, tell you what, we'll start with you, Dr. Gilmore-Randall.
Okay, that's a powerful question, because when you look at freedom, you do realize that after you go into the military, you had more freedom. Your freedom has really been removed from you, because now you have someone, and it's structured. It's a structured type of freedom. You gain more discipline and learning where to go. Someone telling you how to report, how to think. And then sometimes we would tell each other, I need to stay in school while I'm in the military, because sometimes I feel like I'm losing some of the education that I had in coming in, because you're constantly being directed on which way to go. And you don't think for yourself. So with that capacity, you look at it and you're like, okay, I have a different type of freedom now. And as I look at others, and I realize that freedom's not free. It's not free at all.
It's not.
It's not freedom. No, not at all.
No, but
Because that
it
education,
starts with
girl,
free.
yeah,
No?
that education that I went in for, now I face 2 deployments. We lose family members to this. So it really wasn't freedom at all. You lost a great part of yourself. Did it open up other doors? Of course it did. But now I come in and I realize this freedom now that we speak, that all 4 of us are talking about now. No, let's the freedom is having generational wealth. The freedom is being able, like you said, who's going to pay for education, and teaching our children the importance of getting wealth at such a young age, so you do not have to succumb to these entities. So I see freedom from a whole different concept now. So I hope I answered your question.
You did. It's interesting that you say that. I was watching a researcher who was sharing that. It was actually Malcolm Gladwell, I believe, and he was saying that they've done all this research to try and figure out what is the difference between people who are successful and people who aren't. And you and I were probably raised with, you got to work hard, you got to be disciplined, you got to, know the rules, play by the rules, so on and so forth. And what he was saying is that after they controlled for everything, that the difference was actually whether you grew up with resources or whether you grew up poor. And that oftentimes, that more often than not, you grew up poor, you could have all the determination and the grit and the want to that you, and you might even achieve a certain level of success, but it's not the same. And then, and there are other psychological issues. And then a lot of times they don't maintain the success. They attain a certain level and then somehow things pull them back down. And I was like, wow. So when you live in a country where from its inception, some people were set up to have more of that financial freedom and some weren't, what do you do with that? But then there's the other part of me that's also thinking about the whole way that this country was set up and the way the world is organized right now is capitalism. And capitalism thrives only because it has to have an underclass that it's exploiting.
It does.
So even as we teach our children about getting wealth and whatever, what does that mean? Do I want to be buying stock in a company that is using children to mine uranium in Congo? You understand what I'm saying? So it gets exactly complicated. But let's carry on. So how about you, Ron Jupiter? What has shaped your understanding of freedom?
Well, when I came into the military, I actually realized that I had given up all my freedom, right? So when you come into that environment, it's like, what have I done? But I'm gonna tell you this: there's something about being in that environment is where you can find a lot of aspirations, right? Because now you're in a community where everyone around you have given up that freedom. But on the micro level, right, freedom can be achieved by accomplishing something, right? So as you gain, whether it's position, whether you from a private to whether you're a squad leader to the platoon leader or whatever the case may be, or whether you start getting promoted or whether you start getting recognized, you seem to have started to now enjoy a little bit more freedom. So what I learned is that freedom comes by first recognizing the environment you're in and having that spirit of competition. You can never get that freedom unless you recognize the environment you're in and have that spirit of competition. And coming from the Caribbean, that's normally what we do all the time. We always either running track, boxing, competing. And what I realized is because I had that spirit in me, my military experience was amazing. I got promoted below what is called, sooner than everybody else. And then because I had that spirit of competition, I would look to who was on my right and on my left, and I never mind what they said to me. I had an objective to be their boss one day. And so during that's how I was, man. I would, if you outdo me in the military, it's not because I forfeited trying to be excellent. You could outdo me. I ain't got a problem with that. But I'm never going to forfeit being number one because I'm trying to be late, because I'm trying to be mediocre. So that spirit of competition, regardless of where we're at, when freedom is denied, we got to recognize that. And then we have to get that spirit of competition.
So is it a competition with others or is it a competition with yourself?
It's a competition with two things.
Okay.
With yourself and with the standard. So you pick someone that represents that standard of excellence. So as a young private, I'm going to be looking at that first sergeant and looking at that sergeant major, those high-ranking positions. I'm going to look at how their uniforms are, how they comport themselves, how they perform. So now I have an objective, and that's what I'm shooting for. You know what I mean? So now I'm not leaving anything on the table. Everything that I do is based on that spirit of competition. So whether it's something that appears to be very simple or something that appears to be voluminous, so what it is, if it's just by going through an inspection, taking a PT test, going to a range, that standard of excellence was always in me. I'm gonna do the
So
best that I can.
That's what I was going to ask you before we move on to Dr. Nunnally. Is it competition or is it excellence that was driving you?
Yeah, it's excellence, but being driven by excellence alone sometimes.
So iron sharpening iron.
You
You being in an environment where other people are also pursuing that excellence caused you to have to work harder to excel.
Right. Okay. Let me close it with this, right? So the time I came in the army in December 1986, right? So we had blacks in the military was still operating under this idea that we had to be 10 times better than those that we were competing with. So when you saw a black drill sergeant, when you saw a black first sergeant, when you saw a black sergeant major or a black officer, they automatically was like, wow, they set that stand. Those are the shoulders that we stood on. They automatically did that for us. So we had something that we could have been driving to, right? And so if you did not recognize that, then you forfeited. I remember doing my experience as an officer. I would come into the building to check on the troops, and we would look at the young people that are doing what we call extra duty, the ones that was processed for doing something wrong, right? The problem is these kids were just as talented as I was, but they could not connect the position that they were in with the sacrifice for those that came before them. So they forfeited that opportunity.
Gotcha. So I'm hearing quite a few things here. Sacrificing your initial concept of freedom, but in sacrificing that got you into an environment where you had access to figure out a different way to be free, which was to excel, to climb the ranks, so on and so forth. And then when you're also talking about looking up at these other surgeons, so we understand the importance of being standard bearers for our youth, carrying ourselves in a way that a young girl, a young boy can see us, and we might not even know that they are watching us, but they're like, oh my God, when I saw that Dr. Nunnally, when I saw that, Dr. Gilmore-Randall, when I saw that Ron, they may not even know your name, but you have comported yourself in such a way that it becomes a standard by which they can measure themselves and where they want to go. Thank you so much for that. How about you, Dr. Nunnally?
Okay. I'm going to piggyback on when they say your freedom is taken away. My father was part of the Black Panther Party. So imagine.
Oh, not the Black Panther Party.
An 18-year-old in Germany is doing the apartheid. I get to my barracks room, and the first thing I put on my door is Free Mandela. They were like, you can't do this here. That was a wake-up call for me, because I'm marching around like,
they were like, leave that blackness at the door, huh?
Yes. So that was a wake-up call for me. So even though I joined, I'm fighting for other people's freedom, I'm totally not free because I don't have freedom of speech. They told me you cannot protest. You cannot. I don't know where you think you was at, but this is not what you're supposed to be doing.
Not it.
So I had to reel it back in and try to find other alternatives, to voice my opinion and still stand on what I'm supposed to be fighting for. And that's the freedom of everyone. So now I have changed my focus. Like I said, freedom of my family, freedom of my community. And what do that look like to me? That means that we need to be healthy. We need to be financially independent. We need to get resources. And in order to get resources, you got to change your environment. You have to go where those resources are at so you can have exposure. So my freedom is different. I hate to say I'm selfish. I'm not worried about freedom of the world. My freedom is freedom of my family and freedom of my community. I must start here first, and then I could expand out and try to help others.
For anyone who's listening, you want to go to the YouTube channel and replay this again, especially if you're listening on the radio station, because I think that there's so much each of you has said that we need to take notes and then come back and really think about it and ask ourselves questions to understand where we fit in. So I never served in the military. I was in the Nigerian version of ROTC when I was in secondary school. And when I moved back here to the US, I was born here, but did a lot of my formative years outside of this country. When I moved back here, I did consider the military because I wanted to get my college paid for. My father was adamantly opposed to it because he did not want me sacrificing my life to fight wars for a country that did not necessarily care about me. And, you know, we've seen that. Muhammad Ali spoke about that very eloquently, and he was stripped of his medal, and they tried to put him in jail and all of that, when he says, you know, I'm not going to go fight in Vietnam. I'm not going to, those people didn't do anything to me. I'm not going to go fight for them, help you fight them when I'm not respected here in my own country. But what I've seen as an outsider, when I say outsider, as not having served in the military myself, but living in this community, so the community that I live in, and which all three of you live in, is where Fort Cavazos is based, and it's the largest military base in the United States of America. So a lot of interaction with veterans. And what I have observed, and maybe you've observed something different, or maybe you can explain it differently, is people who laid their lives on the line for the country, some of whom are suffering from all kinds of disabilities and issues as a result of that service, but now as civilians don't seem as interested or as committed to living freely. And when I say that, I was very surprised one year when I actually started to talk more publicly about politics, talking to many of my friends who were veterans, who were like, oh, I'm not registered to vote. Oh, I don't vote. And I'm like, I was confused. I'm like, wait a second. You literally put your body on the line for this country. Like if there's a hierarchy of citizenship, you as a veteran should be like at the top rank of citizenship because you've actually risked it all. And yet this most basic of things, as in voting, understanding that whoever is in power impacts your benefits, you know, who for those who are still in the Army, what kind of wars and so on. You have no interest in that. And what I've seen in some, which I have not seen in the three of you, is just this idea of I put in my time. Actually, hear this stuff. I've put in my time. And that's it. And if they can get on the disability, which obviously they've earned, then it's like, I'm just chilling. I'm enjoying my life. And when I'm reaching out to some of them to mentor, to show up in other capacities, they're not that interested. So if each of you can share what you currently do in the community, and how you came about doing that work when you too could have just been like all of you did over 20 years. So you're retired with benefits. So why are you still serving? So share with the audience what you're doing and why you've decided to serve. What is it about your psyche, about how you think through freedom now that you transition from military to civilian life, that still has you out here putting your body and your mind and your resources on the line in a whole different way? We'll start with you, Ron Jupiter.
Oh man! So I'm going to begin. There's a quote out there that says that if you're succeeding without struggle, it's because someone else have struggled for you. And I honestly have what I believe everyone on this panel has. It's called a sense of community. So even though we were in the military and we served in the military, we had a sense of community, and that community begins with who we think we are, right? Whether it's local or it's international, whether we have that cultural umbilical cord reconnected to our brothers and sisters in the diaspora and even back in the motherland. And so with that sense of community, when we came to the level of leadership, certain things became very, very profound to us, like the injustice that we see locally, but we also saw it internationally. Like I heard you talking, Dr. Annette, you was walking around with the Free Nelson Mandela sign, right? And I grew up actually knowing about the Soweto massacre, right? Back in South Africa, because we don't see the people in South Africa as different. And so what I knew was my service was not something that I say I'm serving this country. My service is completed or can be described as I'm serving my community. You know, so I used to tell people that when you see me in uniform, when you see me doing anything, you're going to say, man, that's an amazing soldier. That's a super soldier. And I'm going to tell you a secret. So when I salute that flag, right, and I'm giving it the sharpest salute, but that's what you see. But what I see is those that were struggling to get me into that position. That's why I'm the best that I am, because those are the people that is looking at me. In the spiritual community, we have a quote. When we pray, we say, I am because they were, and they are because I am. We're talking about that community. So when I got out of the military, right? If you ever saw a picture of me in the military, I was completely bald-headed. As a matter of fact, I sent you that picture. You see that picture? I was completely bald-headed for about 28 years. But when I got out of the military and I retired, it was for me to get back to my community, right? In every way, spiritually, in every way, reaching out into my community, because my service really now began. You see, being in the military to me, that was not a service. I was getting paid for that. That was an opportunity, and I took advantage of it. So I don't look at it as service, right? That was an opportunity that I went into, and that's why I was able to come out the way I came out. Because now I'm out, I'm ready to serve. I'm ready to serve my community. And so there's this naivety that exists about how we can better our community, right? You hear people say, there's two conversations you never had. Don't talk about religion, don't talk about politics. But let me tell you something. The reason why we're in the condition we're in is because we don't have discussions on those two subjects. Because the pathology of how we approach life comes from the religion that we accepted to guide our lives. And the condition that which we live and the progression that is made comes from our participation in this thing called politics. So here's the two subjects that is the what do you call the third rail that nobody wants to deal with. But in our community, we have to deal with those two subjects. So that is my passion. So my service began on 2015 when I got out of the military. All of the things that I've learned from that experience is what I'm trying to pour into my community now. So that's how I look at it.
Wow. Again, just trying to digest all of that. So much, like so many sermons that can be preached from each of these things. And as we can see, you went from bald to long flowing locks. You're really free now.
Oh yeah.
Really free right now. So your service began after that. That's powerful. How about you, Dr. Annette?
Mine is the sense of community, family and community, family over everything. But if only my family is doing well and my community is not doing well, that's no fun. It's no fun, so my goal is to ensure everybody in my community that is around me, that is within my reach, that I bring them up along as I climb up the ladder. So it's just about bringing a community together and bringing us all up to the level that we need to be at. One person at a time. Because I always talk to you about everybody in your community don't want to grow with you now. And, it hurts your heart when you have to leave some of those people that's part of your community behind. It really do hurt my heart. But my goal is to bring everybody that's in my community along with me.
Yeah.
So as you were talking, I'm thinking about the current election the election that just took place. It's still current, actually, because there's some places where they're not done counting the ballots and so on and so forth. I won't go into the whole breakdown of that election, but I would say this, that there are people who voted for the insurrectionist, for the traitor, for the liar, for the felon, for the adjudicated rapist, for the person who skips out on his bills, for the person who cannot talk to you for 2 minutes without at least 3 lies. There are people who voted for him. He is now the president-elect of the United States of America, who would say the same thing. I'm just concerned about my family. I want my family to be fine. I'm concerned about my people. So when we talk about freedom, how does that work? If I'm sitting in a place where I feel that in looking out for my family, my people, my community, that is predicated on the oppression of other people. When you think of freedom, how do you think of it when you're saying my family, my community?
That was deep. And that was deep. And that is true, because somebody's going to be on the bottom, Aya. Somebody's going to be on the bottom. And I don't want it to be my family and my community, but somebody's going to be on the bottom.
So you know what? And I hear you, and definitely I'm not naive enough not to understand that the world in which we live in is organized in that way now. I guess for me, I would want to be part of changing that. That we truly, whatever creation story you use, whether it's the Christian or from the Quran or from the Torah, if it's from indigenous people's stories about creation, there was never a sense of lack. There was never a sense of, we had all the air we can breathe and the water and the food. There was abundance of resources in that sense. And now we have created a world where I don't know how we were convinced we got to pay for water. Like God gave us water for free.
Right.
Now we're literally paying for air to some degree. Of course, we're paying for food. And so we've bought into this notion of the only way it's going to exist is somebody got to be on the bottom and somebody got to be on the top. And that's what keeps us at each other, because we can't see how that can be different. But Dr. Gilmore-Randall.
Okay, wait, let me say this right quick.
Yeah.
But I think that's how we got to where we're at, because everybody's thinking like you, Aya. Kumbaya, we all could get along. Oh, we all gonna go out in this party. And that's why we're in the situation that we are in now. Nobody's going to save you but yourself.
No, but I'm going to let Dr. Gilmore speak. This is our 7th episode topic that we can have, because I'm keeping track. But we need to have a conversation about how we got here. And it wasn't kumbaya, it was stupidity. Because if I don't know you and I haven't studied you, I shouldn't have invited you and given you space to grow and get strong with my food, which is what the Native Americans did, which is what the Africans did on the continent as well. You should have kept their behinds out where they were and fortify yourself. But I'm sorry. Please, Dr. Gilmore-Randall,
this is good.
How you showing up in the world now in your sense of freedom and your service?
Okay, I'm showing up in the world now because let me tell you something. You got to have a sense of identity. And I left home with a sense of identity. I joined the military looking for resources, but I left home with a sense of identity. And so it was because of that when we're out doing that PT test and we're striving to be our best, It's because what I'm heading towards and what I came from, that's two different aspects of a spectrum. So I don't want to go back. So I have to give my best. And because I have a sense of identity and a sense of family and a sense of unity, I'm looking to pull those forward with me. That's where that camaraderie came in. If the military did nothing else, it gave us a sense of camaraderie. It gave us a sense of belonging. Okay. But you also had to come with a belief system and a value system along with that. So now you take all of that, and that belief system and that value system tells me that when I look to my left or my right, we still have a military mindset. No man left behind. We ain't gonna leave nobody back there on the battlefield. We got to bring them forward. So when we look at as we continue to serve, that's how we served on active duty. That's how we continue to serve in our communities. That's how we're serving in our families. Because I may have a child that's on the spectrum. I don't, and the other ones are not. That doesn't mean we leave the child that's on the spectrum behind. Now we pour into them more because they need more. And so I would say, how do we continue to move forward? To have conversations that we're having now. I cannot tell you the sense of freedom and how I want to go on the different types of social media and admonish my brothers and sisters that justify the vote that they made this time and saying it because it's in God that we trust. You could not have a sense of identity to say that you voted for this person and put this person in office and you were following the tenets of your belief system. Because if that's the truth, I don't want any part of that belief system that would say that I have to crush someone or have someone living in depravity in order to be on top and be supreme. So it always comes back to a sense of community. It's something that I call, and I just want to share this real quick, that I implement in my practice. I implement in what I do in the community. It's called the 5 C's of healing. And if we can possess that, we're not leaving anybody behind. We have to understand this culture. We have to understand the 5 C's of healing include culture, community, compassion, where we have counseling. Be careful where you get your counsel from. You know, and so we can look at that. Yeah, you got to be careful where you get it from. So when we look at that,
you
and
said
then the area of the
culture, community, compassion, counseling. Was there another one?
It is in my mind. It's slipping my mind right now. Culture, community, compassion, counseling, and I will. It will come back. It will come back, and I'll get it to you before we leave off. But those areas is where we have to say, now wait a minute. Where I come from, the culture that I have is not the same as yours. And the one that I came out of, the futuristic acts, if I'm going to be future oriented, I have to include all of that. And so does everybody else. I have to appreciate who you are, respect who you are. I may not believe like you believe, but I don't hate you for it either. And so that's when we talk about this thing about freedom right about now. We have the freedom to know and to love who we want to love, the freedom to gain what you need to gain, the freedom to move forward, the freedom to advance. There is nothing about, because we can talk about the elephant that's in the room, but there's nothing about this election that bespeaks freedom. But we have people that look like you and I who brag about, I voted for this. That level of identity is so skewed and crazy to me that I just sit and I had to take a moment, y'all. I had to step back for a minute. And I was like, where are we as a people?
Where are we? That identity you talked about, you said you had a sense of identity. When you don't, or when you know, the other thing, religion being the opium of the people, when you allow other people, there are 2 books I'm telling people now, you may have it, but you didn't read it. One is the Bible. Because most of the people who are saying, I heard people tell me directly at the polls, I'm voting the Bible. And I would ask, what are your issues? So we can talk about what part of the Bible you're talking about. Because you can really find a verse in the Bible to justify just about anything. Okay.
Anything.
It's all in there in the Bible. But if you haven't read it and someone else is indoctrinating you and you can't even see how you're being used, you'll understand that there was a slave Bible. There was a version of the Bible that was given to our ancestors. that only told them stuff like, slave, obey your master because this is right in the Lord. That only told them, endure because you will get you understand your ways are not God's ways. His mind is higher than yours. You don't understand. But in heaven, and it was a way to control people. So Desmond Tutu said, they came, you had the land, they had the Bible. They said, close your eyes and let us pray. And you closed your eyes and prayed. And after you said amen, you had the Bible and they had the land. So, hey, but again, that would be topic number 8, I think we're on. So I'm going to say popcorn because I'm looking at our time here. I'm going to say popcorn like a minute, maybe, if you can share what you're currently working on in the community right now. And we'll start with you, Ron Jupiter.
Okay, so I'm working on a project called FIGHT, F-I-G-H-T. And so this program is dedicated to Black men. And so I'll tell you a little story about this program. So a pastor wanted to do his ceremony for Sunday, and it was Saturday, and he had a teenage boy. But the boy was requiring his attention. So he gave the boy a puzzle and says, hey, you go ahead and put this puzzle together. That way he could put his little stuff together. So within about 5 minutes, this project should have taken an hour. Within 5 minutes, the little boy came back and said, hey, Dad, I'm done with the project. So the father was like, whoa, how come you got it done so quick? Now, this project was to put a map of the world together. What the little boy did was he flipped the project over. And on the back side of the project was the image of a Black man. So he put the image of the Black man together, and when he turned the project over, he had completed the project. So the moral of the story is, if you fix the Black man, you fix the problems in the world, right?
Okay, representing the brothers. We might have something to say about it, but we'll go along with you.
No. Work with me here. So fixing the Black man has nothing to do with the position that the Black woman holds. Because remember, even if we comprehend what we think we know, when we read the Bible in the beginning of Genesis, it says God created man, male and female created them. So man is a species. Man was not the male entity. So male and female, and he didn't create the female subordinate to the male. Now that's a story. What people call spirituality is a comprehension, is a high level comprehension of nature. That's why our ancestors call it the meta-neta. If we study nature, these stories, we know these stories came from babies. So these stories would not be convincing, because if we study nature, we know that a woman consists of an X and an X chromosome. And we know that a man consists of an X and a Y chromosome. If you break those chromosomes down and separate them, the woman has 8 markers of her chromosome identity. The man has 7.
See, now you've just gone to episode 10 now.
I'm breaking it down.
Well, tell me about FIGHT again. Tell me specifically.
Okay, so FIGHT is the acronym FIGHT. The acronym FIGHT, the F stands for future. So as men, we have to look and see what the future holds, and we have to work towards designing that future, shaping that future. The I stands for introspection. So we can't go somewhere until we look at ourselves. We understand our condition. We know why we are who we are. And then when we come to the table, we have to be independent in order to add to something. We can't come to the table saying, I need help. So we have to have that introspection to become independent. Then we communicate as a team. The G stands for gratitude. Gratitude means that we have to be thankful for our mother to bring us into this world. We have to be thankful for the ancestors who have come before us. right?
Okay.
So we can't lose that gratitude.
You can go quickly.
I'm gonna go to the H. I'm gonna go to the H. I'm gonna get to the H and the T.
Okay.
Right? The H is one of our biggest problems in our community: health. The number one killer of Black men, we know, is prostate cancer and heart attack and all those things. So we have to consider health. And the T, of course, stands for teamwork. So that's the project fight. So that's what I'm bringing to the community moving forward.
For those of you who are interested, come over to our YouTube channel and you'll be able to, get more contact information on each of our guests and a little bit more information on what it is they do. We'll make sure that we put that in the description of the program. How about you, Dr. Annette Nunnally?
As you stated at the beginning, I am a board member of the IT Girls, the Intelligent and Talented Girls, which is a mentorship program for girls aged 10 to 18. I'm also a board member of an organization called One Story, which fight homelessness for female veterans, because that is the unforgotten demographic of the veteran community.
Wow.
Are the females.
Wow. And of course, you are teaching women how to make money through Queens with a Millionaire Mindset. Y'all might want to check out. They have different workshops and programs that they offer at a very, very affordable price because poverty is a lot more expensive. And I often tell people, you put your money where your mouth is. If you got money for some of these other things, you got money possibly to invest. And how about you, Dr. Gilmore-Randall? What are you currently working on right now?
I am currently working on my new book release, and it's Renewing a Nation.
Okay.
And with that, I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback with that because it is, I've created a model that pretty much looks like what our Jewish brothers and sisters are doing alongside their synagogues. And so they have a family advocacy center. And ours is a little bit different because we have to look at our history and bring that in. So we teach our own history, and we have our, and even when we have different approaches, theoretical approaches, we have to adjust those two to include validation for our own and moving forward with that. The reason I say I would get pushback from the church, because it is, when we talk about the Black church, and if y'all hadn't noticed right now, a lot of my stuff that I talk about, people don't really take kindly to it. They say, you know what, hey, that's too much. And so, but I believe that the time to do the right thing is always now. And I talk about that because the Black church is one of the richest entities that we have on every Sunday morning. And there's no reason for us not to have the resources that we need. And if we can start right there, and looking at if we're going to fix where we are, fix our family unit, fix our and not having to depend on our government, it is time to address these entities that so bleed the people. And y'all forgive me, because I'm a pastor myself.
No, we're rethinking freedom. This has to be part of the conversation.
Right. And so where we bleed the people every Sunday, but where are the resource centers? Where are the schools? Where are the hospitals? Where are we what are we doing and moving forward and helping? This is where, when you look in the Jewish community, there's a book that I was reading.
20 seconds.
And I'll send all this to you too. I'll send it all to you, Ms. Aya. And where one of the Jewish doctors, she said when she grew up in Brooklyn, New York, she grew up and she would always hear everybody talking about the Holocaust. And she realized that people were stuck. So she began to go into neuroscience, neurobiology of trauma, and begin to look at that and get an understanding. And so now she works for the VA right now up in Washington, D.C. But she has dealt with her community, and they begin to erect these institutes or these counseling centers based on the needs of the people in that community. And what happens, the temple provided the funding for it. The temple provided the funding, because the one thing we will say in the Jewish community, we can have different denominations, but it's still one God. It's still one fight. And the Holocaust was still real. Okay.
Thank you so much. Because it is a 1-hour radio show, unfortunately, I have to stop us.
I got you, but you know where I'm going with that.
Yes, so I do. And I will say that off mic, we're going to need to come together, because everything that each of you has talked about, we need to come together, particularly in these political and economic times, to figure out what we're doing for each other and doing for our community, doing for our children. I want to thank you. Want to say thank you to everyone who's listening. If this is your first time tuning in, clearly you need to come back. Please share this with other people and go to the YouTube channel so that you can get the contact information for all the guests that we've had today. And I look forward to seeing you next Monday, 7 a.m. Central Time. Welcome again, and thank you for watching Rethinking Freedom.